The world does not respect the person who begs to be understood. For far too long, you have been entering social arenas completely unarmed, fundamentally misinterpreting the toxic arrows shot at your character. When someone hurls a covert insult, masks passive aggression as a casual joke, or openly attempts to humiliate you in front of others, you do precisely what they have mathematically and psychologically calculated you to do. You flash with immediate anger, your breathing tightens, your pulse races. You engage in a loud, exhausting defensive argument, or worse, you force a nervous, submissive laugh just to keep the peace and dissolve the tension. You believe you are de-escalating the situation, but in the hidden code of human behavior, you are doing something entirely different. You are giving them exactly what they need to survive: your reactive energy. Look closely at your past experiences. What did your defensive arguments ever get you? Did they bring you genuine apologies? Did they make the other person suddenly realize their cruelty and change their ways? No. Your long defenses were weaponized against you, twisted into fresh fuel for further manipulation, leaving you drained, hollowed out, and emotionally bankrupt, while the provocateur walked away with a smug, toxic sense of absolute superiority. But ancient Stoic realism combined with deep behavioral psychology reveals a chilling, powerful truth. Narcissists and toxic provocateurs do not insult you because they truly believe you are flawed. They insult you because their fragile, hollow egos are running dangerously low on fuel, and they have identified you as an easy source of emotional supply. They are throwing bait into the dark water, desperately waiting for you to bite so they can validate their own existence at the expense of your dignity. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced treachery, disrespect, and political daggers every single day of his reign, yet he remained completely unshakable because he operated under a different psychological system. He understood that the ultimate revenge against a toxic mind is not to strike back, it is to refuse to look like the enemy. Today, that pattern ends. We are going to fully dissect the 5 hidden signs that a toxic person is actively trying to bait you, expanding each sign into its raw psychological machinery and unfolding the cold, precise Stoic laws required to walk away cleanly, leaving the manipulator trapped inside the burning prison of their own malice. If you are looking for a guide on how to shout louder or win a petty screaming match, close this video immediately. But if you are ready to master your internal climate, deploy the weight of heavy silence, and watch the provocateur panic in the face of your absolute stillness, let us begin. To outmaneuver a manipulator, you must first learn to read the silent warning signs of emotional baiting before the trap snaps shut. The first sign is the deployment of the casual slur wrapped in a joke. A toxic person will rarely attack you with obvious, loud aggression up front. They prefer to test your structural integrity first. They will slide a cutting remark about your intelligence, your appearance, your past failures, or your career into a casual group conversation, laughing it off immediately. If you show hurt or call them out on their cruelty, they instantly flip the script, using the ultimate gaslighting phrases, "You are being too sensitive." "It was just a joke. Why are you taking it so seriously?" This is a deliberate psychological probe. They are measuring the thickness of your emotional skin. If you get defensive, look visibly upset, or laugh along to avoid social conflict, the manipulator notes down that your boundaries are soft, malleable, and easily penetrated. They now know exactly what buttons to push next. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus provided the perfect counter-framework for this psychological probe when he wrote, "If someone reports to you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses but answer. They must have been ignorant of my other faults, else they would not have mentioned these alone." True Stoic power begins when you refuse to play the victim or the angry target in their twisted comedy routine. When a casual slur is thrown masked as humor, you do not smile, you do not explain why it was hurtful, and you do not argue. Instead, you deploy the absolute weight of zero validation. You lock direct, unblinking eye contact with the provocateur, keep your face entirely deadpan, and allow a long, freezing, awkward silence to hang over the entire room. Do not break the tension. Let their cheap jokes suffocate in the vacuum of your absolute lack of amusement. When the silence becomes unbearable, they will scramble to backpedal, and their internal insecurity will be laid bare for everyone in the room to see. The second sign that you are being targeted by a toxic mind is the trap of manufactured urgency. High-conflict personalities thrive on chaos because chaos bypasses your logical, rational brain and forces you to act on pure, raw survival instinct. They will call you with a sudden, artificial crisis, demand an immediate answer to a highly complex question, or drop an emotional bomb on you right before an important meeting, an event, or your sleep. They want you spinning. They want your heart rate elevated, your thoughts scattered, and your anxiety peaking. Because an anxious mind is incredibly easy to steer, control, and manipulate. When you sense this artificial storm being deliberately created around you, you must anchor your mind in what Stoicism calls the sovereign pause. Do not rush to match their frantic, chaotic energy. Do not scramble to fix a fire that they deliberately lit just to watch you burn. The Roman Stoic Seneca warned, "Delay is the best remedy for anger and panic." Take a deep, deliberate breath, lean back physically, and let 3 to 5 seconds of complete, heavy silence pass before you utter a single syllable. Your slow pacing signals to the manipulator's subconscious that their panic holds absolutely zero authority over your reality. You are water to their chaotic fire. When you finally speak after the pause, your voice must be flat, minimalist, and clinical, completely devoid of urgency. Use sentences that act as absolute dead ends. "I will look into this when I have time." "This is not an emergency for me. We will speak tomorrow." By refusing to accelerate your mind, you completely derail their psychological momentum. You force them to sit with their own manufactured panic while you remain entirely unmoved within your internal sanctuary. As the interaction deepens and their initial tactics fail, you will inevitably encounter the third sign, the radical distortion of facts. A narcissist or high-conflict manipulator cannot survive in an environment where objective truth exists, because objective truth naturally exposes their deep inadequacy, selfishness, and malice. When you bring up a genuine grievance or set a boundary, they will completely rewrite history right in front of your face. They will claim with absolute confidence that they never said those words, accuse you of misremembering the event, or wildly exaggerate a minor mistake you made years ago to artificially balance the scales of blame. They want to pull you into a muddy, exhausting debate over details that do not matter, draining your cognitive bandwidth until you give up out of sheer mental fatigue. This is the exact moment where your old toxic conditioning forces you into the destructive trap of over-explanation. You start pulling up old text messages, detailing timelines, and pleading for them to see reality, thinking, if they just see the proof, they will understand. Stop immediately. You are treating a psychological predator as if they are a rational, fair juror in a court of law. They know the truth, they simply do not care about it. They are using the argument as a distraction technique to avoid accountability. Stoicism teaches us to view these verbal distortions not as personal insults, but as the natural, uncontrollable output of a broken mind. When a wild dog barks at you from behind a fence, you do not get down on all fours and bark back to prove you are right. You accept that it is simply in the dog's nature to bark, and you keep walking. When a toxic person distorts the facts, your response should be a clean, absolute barrier. We remember it differently. I am not debating this with you. Do not offer a single piece of evidence. Do not show them screenshots or timelines. Let them argue with the blank, unyielding stone wall of your refusal to engage, while you preserve your mental energy for things you can actually control. The fourth, and perhaps most insidious and dangerous sign of provocation, is the weaponization of your deepest empathy. Toxic people do not choose their targets at random. They selectively hunt for individuals who possess a high capacity for warmth, guilt, conscientiousness, and care. When they realize they cannot break your logic, they will deliberately perform weakness. They will present themselves as the ultimate victim of circumstance, bring up their past traumas, or drop subtle hints that your cold boundaries are causing them immense, unfair emotional pain. They know that if they can successfully activate your internal guilt mechanism, you will voluntarily lower your guards, erase your own limits, and open the gates of your sanctuary just to make them feel safe and happy again. This is the quiet, tragic beginning of self-erasure. You begin to compromise your peace to heal a wound you did not cause. Seneca directly warned about this structural imbalance when he stated that you must live with integrity, not desperation. Being a virtuous, empathetic person does not mean turning your soul into a public highway where anyone can dump their emotional garbage and tread mud into your home. When a manipulator tries to use guilt to breach your boundaries, you must mentally switch from emotional processing to cold, analytical observation. Recognize that their sudden tears, heavy sighs, and tales of woe are not expressions of genuine grief. They are tactical tools used to secure your compliance and break your stance. You do not argue with their victimhood, nor do you rush to soothe it or apologize. You let the discomfort of the moment exist in the room, without rushing to smooth it over. You maintain your boundary with absolute firmness, responding with a simple, "I understand your perspective, but my decision stands." Your boundaries are a sovereign decree, not a subject for emotional negotiation or compromise. The fifth and final sign that a toxic person is trying to break your spirit is the calculation of public humiliation. When a manipulator realizes that they can no longer control your mind in private, their desperation peaks, and they will escalate the warfare into a public setting. They will mock your decisions in front of your colleagues, bring up deeply embarrassing personal details during a family dinner, or attempt to isolate you by painting you as the cold, unreasonable villain to a crowd of onlookers. They are banking entirely on your social anxiety and your natural fear of judgment. They believe that the intense fear of public embarrassment will force you to break your calm, lose your temper, and make a scene. The moment you shout, cry, or become visibly defensive in public, the trap snaps shut. They look at the crowd, point at your reactive anger, and say, "See? I told you they were the unstable one." The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of a profound psychological shield for moments exactly like this. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. When public humiliation is aimed directly at your chest, your absolute low reactivity becomes a weapon of mass psychological destruction. You do not flash with rage. You do not lower your head in shame. You maintain a tall, proud, completely steady posture. You look directly into the eyes of the provocateur with an expression of calm, detached curiosity, as if you are a scientist observing a strange, microscopic organism under a microscope. Let the entire room feel the crushing contrast between their loud, toxic volatility and your heavy, unshakable stone composure. Your utter refusal to flinch or engage exposes their sickness to everyone present without you having to utter a single defensive word. When you remain silent and steady, the crowd stops looking at you as the target and starts looking at the manipulator as the abusive aggressor. To successfully implement these strategies, you must deeply understand the concept of radical outcome independence. The desperate, anxious mind always operates from a position of profound starvation. It clings desperately to toxic relationships, abusive jobs, and manipulative social circles because it pathologically fears that losing them means total destruction and permanent loneliness. Manipulators have a predatory, instinctual alignment with this fear. If a narcissist knows that you are terrified of being alone, that fear becomes the invisible leash they use to walk you. If they know you will endure any insult, any distortion, and any public slight just to keep the peace and avoid a breakup or a conflict, they will continuously lower the bar of how they treat you until you have nothing left of your identity. Stoic detachment is the ultimate reclamation of your leverage and your human dignity. It is the deep, internal realization that your baseline worth does not collapse when someone walks out of your life or rejects you. When you accept the worst-case scenario, when you mentally visualize losing the relationship, the status, or the approval, and realize that your core soul would still survive and rebuild, you become genuinely dangerous to those who wish to control you. You no longer speak to prevent rejection. You no longer walk on eggshells to avoid an argument. You speak only to express truth, and you act only to protect integrity. When you walk into a room completely detached from the need for anyone's applause, validation, or permission, your physical posture shifts. Your gaze steadies. Your energy slows down to a heavy, authoritative frequency. You create a heavy gravity that naturally commands respect, not because you begged or demanded it, but because you are entirely whole without them. As you step into this level of restraint, you must understand that this path of inner sovereignty will not make you popular with the crowd. When you begin to implement selective access, cut off the flow of your explanations, and meet provocation with absolute cold stillness, the people who were used to consuming your energy will become deeply resentful. They will call you arrogant, distant, stuck up, or heartless. They will tell mutual friends that you have changed and become cold. Let them speak. That distance they feel is not cruelty. It is the natural, healthy filtration system of self-respect. Some people were only comfortable with you when you had zero limits, zero boundaries, and zero self-respect. They only loved the version of you that was easy to exploit, easy to reach, eager to please, and simple to manipulate. Your new silence is an evolutionary pressure that their toxic ego cannot survive. The connections that were built entirely on your over-availability and emotional reactivity will naturally wither away and die, and the connections rooted in mutual respect, dignity, and high integrity will remain. This is not a loss of a friend, it is the strategic alignment of your life. Do not mistake this cold, controlled mindset for permanent bitterness, cynicism, or emotional emptiness. True Stoic power is not about freezing your heart completely solid so you never feel human connection again. That is not strength. That is avoidance, and avoidance is always driven by deep-rooted fear. True mastery is controlled internal temperature. It is the absolute ability to hold your heart steady in the exact middle of a raging psychological storm. It means you keep your warmth, your empathy, and your vulnerability locked safely inside an untouchable vault, reserved exclusively for those rare individuals who have proven their consistency, their loyalty, and their absolute respect over time. You do not waste your gold on swine who tread it into the mud. You become highly selective with your access, because you recognize that your peace of mind is a finite, sacred, and divine resource that must be protected at all costs. From this exact moment on, look at every single provocation, every passive-aggressive comment, and every attempt at manipulation as a direct test of your inner governance. When someone throws disrespect your way or tries to pull you down into the mud of an unnecessary dramatic argument, visualize the emotional remote control in their hands. Look at them. Recognize the bait for exactly what it is, and choose to pull that control back into your own hands. You feel the irritation rise. You hear the toxic words, but you refuse to obey them blindly like a slave. You take a slow, deep breath, lean back into your own center, and you allow the pause to stretch until it becomes crushing. Let the world scream. Let the manipulators panic, and let the narcissists scramble in the dark, while you remain entirely unmoved, anchored in your own divine sovereignty. True strength has never been about having the last word. It has always been about knowing that their words no longer hold a single ounce of power over your soul. If this unshakable clarity resonates with the path of self-mastery you are walking, consider subscribing to the journal. Stay tightly connected to the version of yourself that chooses heavy discipline over cheap drama and absolute internal governance over impulsive emotional reaction. Protect your inner sanctuary. Stay anchored.